Today on the podcast, I'm being joined by Liz from California. It's so good to have you, Liz.
Hi, guys. It's so great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I'm curious, Liz. First of all, how did you and I get connected to begin with? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I followed you for a few years. I love your books, Love in Every Season, one of my faves. I really admire holistic health. I admire what you bring to the church. And I saw you post on your Instagram about doing this. So I said, I'm going to do it. This sounds great.
I'm so excited to have you in this in particular, this soul care
hmm
series. What about the soul care series
hmm
drew you in?
Yeah, great question. To be honest with you, I struggle with boundaries within things I want to invest in. I am very much so go 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 executor. I will give my all. So I have a hard time finding that actual soul rest.
Yeah.
And I just felt very drawn to your content. Like that's me. I am on the line of burnout all the time. So I was like, I need help in this area, and I want to get that help.
What does the line of burnout look like for you? Like, how do you know that you're approaching a point that's not good for you?
Yeah. So I'm very much so a people person. I'm passionate. I love to invest in things. And when I feel myself start wanting to withdraw, not as passionate, kind of feeling disconnected, that's when I'm like, what's going on? Because I am normally all in. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. And this is why I think soul care is so important because
hmm
we are called to be a bright light, a
Right.
city on a hill.
hmm
And the opposite of our light shining bright is
hmm
burnout. It's
Yeah.
exactly what it is.
It's true.
The light has burned out. It's been
Yeah.
snuffed. It's been blown out. And I think that's what the enemy wants from
hmm
us. And, especially in the church, I think we have a really hard time understanding the importance of soul care.
hmm
And I would go as far as to say, especially for those of us in ministry,
Yes.
because it does feel like such a fine line. And I think that's specifically what drew you in. Out of the
hmm
6 rhythms that Jesus practiced to care for his soul, you feel like you struggle the most with the rhythm of protect. And
Yes.
that is the rhythm of boundaries
hmm
and protecting your calling. So why has that been a struggle for you?
To be honest, it feels like it always roots back to childhood. But I was a very over responsible child. I was the one where everything was put on if no one else wanted to do it. And I'm also one where I'm like, if it's not going to get done, I'm going to get it done. Like I'm good at getting things done, so I naturally will do that in every sphere. The interesting thing is, though, in my personal life, I'm great with boundaries, but in work, awful. That is where I really struggle.
And work for you has been ministry, right?
Yes, ministry, and then I'm currently a personal trainer, so giving to people. In that
Yeah.
sense, I don't know the limit because I'm like, "This is work. Aren't I supposed to be doing this?"
Yeah. So what made this kind of come to the forefront of your mind recently? Like what
Mhm.
has caused you to recognize, I think something's off here.
Yeah. Well, I just got done with 3 years of ministry school, and before that, I worked in camp ministry, and each year, I kinda found a little bit of, like, "I'm really tired. I'm needing to pull back, and I don't normally need to pull back this much," because it's been extreme where I'm like, I'm starting book clubs, and I'm overwhelmed. I'm like, "I can't do this. I can't lead anything," like, very much so anxious about everything I'm leading or starting, and I'm like, "I don't want people relying on me." Conflict is stressful and it's normally not. So the things that normally aren't hard have become really hard, and it's kind of built upon each year. So I'm like, something needs to change.
Yeah. So what have you found? What do you think the culture of ministry has been from what you've observed in ministry school?
Oh my. It's definitely been very busy. Like keep going, like trust the Lord and rest, but not actually teaching what does soul rest look like? Like, yeah, I can lay down in my bed, but that's not actually replenishing me. And I'm
Right.
trying to read my Bible, but I feel so disconnected I can't focus. So what do I do then? It's like, oh, well, just trust the Lord's gonna come. And I'm like, He does, but how do I actually shift my life? So that's kind of the culture I've been around where I see leaders like stumbling into health issues. like adrenal fatigue and just heightened nervous systems because they're not resting. They're just going and trusting the Lord in it, which is that right or wrong? I don't know, but that's just what I've seen.
And then just play that out. What happens eventually? Like, what have you seen people struggle? Have you seen people break down? Have you seen people burn out? What has that looked like towards the end of the journey?
Yes. So I've seen like my personal leaders that I've had like close contact with, like they're stressed a lot of the time. Their mental clarity is not really there. They're forgetful. They're like tired. They're just trying to white knuckle onto the next
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
And that, like, I've seen that a lot in my family as well. And I just know I'm like, that's not how we're supposed to live. Like, I don't think that's trusting the Lord, to the best of our ability. So,
yeah. You're right. You're absolutely right. And
mhm.
that's where things get confusing is when we
Yeah.
start enabling unhealthy behavior
Hmm.
in the name of trusting in the Lord,
Yeah.
where I don't believe we would have the Lord's stamp of approval in doing it the way that we're doing it. And I know this to be true because of the time I've spent in the Gospels and studying the life of Jesus and how good he was at caring for his soul.
Hmm.
And the thing I think that's been most profound is realizing that, Jesus only had 3 years of ministry.
Hmm.
That was it. He had 30 years of kind of preparing and growing and maturing, and then 3 years of full-time ministry.
Hmm.
And you would think in those 3 years, if he's like, I only have 3 years, I got to get as much accomplished as I can.
Hmm.
You would think there would be this level of just heightened nervous system, full steam
Yeah.
ahead, do everything I could possibly do.
Yeah.
But even in those 3 years, he was so balanced.
Yeah.
He took the time to stop. He took the
Hmm.
time to withdraw. He took the time to set boundaries. He was
Hmm.
really good at the rhythm of protecting the calling that God had put on his life. And the
Hmm.
only way he could protect his calling was by protecting his world,
Hmm.
his energy, his
Yeah.
heart, his health, and
Hmm.
making sure to stop when he needed to stop and not be driven by the obligations and expectations of others.
Hmm.
And it was just so profound to see how good he was at, in a way, not caring. And there's a Bible verse
Hmm.
that even says, like, he didn't really care about the opinions of man. That
Hmm.
doesn't mean that he didn't care about men and women. Of course he did. But it was God's opinion that mattered the most.
Hmm.
And that's what drove him.
Yes.
And you see just how often he took time to be alone, to
Hmm.
balance out the noise
Right.
and to just to protect his calling. And so I think this is really crucial for those of us in ministry to take this seriously
Hmm.
and not just to do what everyone expects of us, but to do what's
Right.
good for us and what's good for God's calling on our life. And I agree with you 1000%. This stems from childhood.
Hmm.
There's so many things we learn from the past that keep us struggling in boundaries. I just worked with a couple recently who's in full-time ministry, and they keep defaulting to unhealthy schedules, crazy busy lives,
Hmm.
just overwhelming ministry needs and demands. And then they're like, okay, let's put in boundaries. And then a few months or years into it, the boundaries dissipate and they're back to feeling burned out and just
Hmm.
life is crazy. Why is that? It's because boundaries are not this external behavior modification.
Right.
Boundaries are internal. Boundaries are rooted in a belief system. And
Mm.
if we don't get to the root of our belief system, we're going to
Mhm.
keep filling our schedules again and again and again
Right.
and again, which brings me back to your point of your childhood.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
You said that you felt like essentially like you were the one to fill in the blanks. Like
Mhm.
if it was going to get done, you had to be the one to do it. What was that dynamic like? Like give me a picture of what was going on in that season.
Yeah, so I come from a divorced home. So at my mom's house, very unstructured and I was the youngest of 3 girls for a little bit, and when they were rebelling and didn't wanna do stuff, I was the helpful, good child who would do it. So then there became this reliance on me, like, "Okay, like, Liz is just gonna do it." Whereas at my dad's house, very structured, rigid, "You have to do these things. I don't care what you say, you're doing everything." So just both sides, I had to do everything, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so that role just kind of continued with you. Like, I'm responsible for getting it done. I'm responsible for filling in the gaps for
Yeah.
others.
Mhm.
If I don't do it, no one else will. I
Yes.
have to do this to
Mhm.
keep equilibrium in the
Yeah.
family. So I
Mhm.
have to do more because others are doing less.
Yeah.
And then you just carry that with you. You're like, you're the perfect candidate for ministry.
Yeah. It's true.
Sadly,
Yeah.
it's like, I have to do more. I have to do more.
Yeah.
It's my responsibility. I want to take care of others. I have to
Mhm.
fill in the gaps.
Right.
Rather than, okay, let me pull back. What do I need? What am I
Mhm.
feeling? How healthy am I? How filled up am I?
Mhm.
So why do you think, like, what does that look like in ministry? You talked about being on the edge of burnout a lot.
Mhm.
Do you feel like it's hard for you to recognize what you need and pull back because you feel like you're letting people down? You feel like if you pull back, things are going to just fall apart? Like, why has it been hard for you, specifically with ministry school?
Yeah, I'd say it's more so if I don't do it, it's not gonna get taken care of. Because, like I said, when I need something or when I'm like, "I want this, I'm for it, I can do that." But when it's like, I can't for me, I think it comes down to trust, like, I can't trust that someone else is gonna get it done, and I know I will, so might as well just do it. And the thing is, I've been praised for that. So there's also this little level of affirmation where it's like, oh, people look to me because I'm strong and because I can handle things and they can rely on me. So I have purpose in that.
Right. And it fuels an unhealthy cycle
Yeah.
until you get to a point where you're done. You don't have
Right.
anything left. You've
Yeah.
lost your desire. You've lost the fire. The
Yeah.
spark has been snuffed
Mhm.
because you're just done.
Right.
And that's not protecting your calling.
Yeah. It's not.
That's, in fact, maybe taking on the calling of other people who aren't being responsible with their calling.
Yeah, you're right.
And then in a way, we're enabling that
Mhm.
behavior to continue
Yeah.
rather than calling it out and expecting it to change.
Mhm.
Sometimes when the ball drops, people realize they need to be responsible to pick up the ball.
Mhm.
Like, if we put ourselves in the position of saving everything and
Mhm.
everyone, they're going to keep relying on us
Right.
for that role. And we're
Right.
sort of enabling this cycle of dropping balls. And I have
Right.
to be the one to make sure it doesn't drop. And they'll continue to kind of not take responsibility in the way that they should because they
Mhm.
know that I'm going to pick up the pieces
Mhm.
at my expense.
Mhm.
And we're not talking about having a servant heart. We're not talking
Right.
about,
Right.
giving and being kind. Of course, all of that matters and all of that's important. But if we're doing it at the expense of caring for our soul,
Yeah.
then there's a bigger picture at stake.
Mhm.
Because as soon as we burn out, as soon as we fall, as soon as we drop, so many people go down with us. That's the
Yeah.
risk and reward of ministry.
Mhm.
It's like we don't just care for ourselves for ourselves. We're caring for ourselves for multiple reasons. One, so that we can pour out in the healthiest way possible. But two, because if we burn out and go down, everybody touching us, everybody surrounding us, everybody that we're influencing goes down as well.
Mhm.
It's like a domino effect. You've seen when leaders fall from
Mhm.
the height of ministry,
Yeah.
how many people go down with them.
Mhm.
And so this is why we have to take this so seriously.
Yes.
So I guess my question to you is, what do you think maybe what is the first step for you to start doing this a little bit differently?
Mhm. Um, well, something I have started doing is being more honest with myself about what is my capacity, what is mine, and what is not mine, and then taking the steps to adjust that. And I've had a few conversations with people where I've taken things on, and honestly, the conversations have been hurtful to them because I have been that person that's like, I can do all things, you know?
Right.
And even taking ownership of that, of like, you're right, I'm not following through and I'm just not able to. And I'm sorry about that. I can't give to that. It would be counter for my health. So that's a step I have been taking and
So
just,
being honest with yourself and with
yes,
others
yes,
about your own capacity.
yes,
And there comes a level of humility with that. You know, when you've found value in and even pride in the fact that I can do it all, there
yes.
is a high dose of humility that comes with being able to say, this isn't good for me. I can't do it
Mhm,
all and I shouldn't do it.
mhm,
And so I'm going to have to ask you to help. I'm going to have to ask you to fill in the gaps. I'm going to have to ask you to help me meet a need that I am
mhm,
unable to do on my own.
mhm.
How does that feel?
I'd say a few weeks ago, like I hated that idea, just wanted to throw up. But now I'm in a place where I'm like, this is serious and like I have to do what it takes. So it still feels uncomfortable, but I know it's the best thing. So it feels like a little bit better.
Yeah. You know, even Jesus got to that point. You know, think about him in the Garden of Gethsemane when he was like,
Mhm.
I need you to stay awake
Yeah.
and pray. I need you to do this for me.
Hmm.
And he was Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, stay awake. Like he was able to understand his human capacity, even though he was fully God, he was fully
Hmm.
man, and he honored his human capacity
Hmm.
by taking naps, by pulling away, by saying, no, I'm not going to go
Hmm.
there, even though it's expected of me. I'm going to go here instead. No,
Hmm.
it's not the time for this yet. He said a lot of no and not yet.
Hmm.
And if Jesus had to honor his human capacity to make sure he stayed filled up with the Father, how much more do we have to honor ours? And how
Right.
prideful is it to think that we don't have limits, that we
Yeah.
don't have capacity?
Yeah.
You know, there's something to be said of that. Like, where am I getting my value from?
Hmm.
And those are the underlying belief systems that we need to tweak in
Hmm.
order to be able to set boundaries and stop and ask for help and say
Right.
no and not yet. And I can't do this and I'm unable and this isn't
Hmm.
good for me.
Right.
Why did you said it almost made you throw up at some point? Why? Why such a visceral response?
um, I think it goes back to my upbringing or needing help was not okay. Where it was praised again to be strong, to be the one who could handle stuff. And even there's something uncomfortable in me when I feel vulnerable and like I need help. For me, I feel like a little child who's helpless when I need help.
It's almost acknowledging some sort of weakness,
Yes,
some sort
that's
of
right.
deficit.
Yes.
Yeah. When really it's a reflection
Hmm.
of maturity, of
Hmm.
wisdom, of
Hmm.
strength, of awareness and insight of who I am
Hmm.
and what I have to bring to the table. It's
Hmm.
honoring the calling that God has put on my life by
Yeah.
saying yes to the things He's called me to
Hmm.
and no to the obligations and demands of others.
Hmm.
It's a place of empowerment
Yeah.
rather than weakness. And so
Hmm.
a lot of this is a belief system adjustment because if we default back to the belief system of this is weakness, I can do it all my own, I don't need
Hmm.
help. It's a deficit to have needs, it's a deficit to need help. I need to do what others aren't able to do to show my
Hmm.
strength
Right.
and to show my value. If we default back to that belief system, it's only going to be a matter of time
Yeah.
until our schedule is filled up again, our plates
Right.
filled up again, and we're back to the borderline of burnout, if not complete
Yes.
burnout. And
Yes.
that's not a healthy place to function in ministry.
No.
We pour out best when we're filled up.
Hmm.
We do the most effective work when we're filled up.
Hmm.
So, what have you found is filling for you? Have you found, I know you're going to dive into soul care and read all about it.
Oh, yes.
Have you found something that's soul filling for you in this season as you're trying to navigate some of these underlying belief systems, set
Mhm.
boundaries, and take time to take care of yourself?
Yeah, I'd say the two main things have been like I have some inner circle friends that I'm just able to be real with and honest with these things and have that mirror. And that's helpful because it's like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy in this. And then having fun. I do game nights with friends, just do fun, spontaneous things. I have a high value for fun because I
Yeah,
know that that's what enables me to go deeper into the hard stuff. So
right.
just trying to focus on those and releasing as much as I can,
Yeah.
those have been really helpful for me.
I can relate to that so much. And I think for those of us who have harder jobs mentally, like
Mhm.
after a long day of counseling, I come upstairs because I have my basement office. I come
Mhm.
upstairs and I'm like, all right, guys, what are we going to do for fun? Who wants to
Yeah.
go do something fun?
Uh-huh.
And it's because I need to fill up with
Right.
the joys of life
Right.
after I've swam in the struggles of life.
Mhm.
It's like it keeps it balanced. And
Right.
one of my favorite parts of soul care, of writing soul care, and I think you'll really resonate with this part as well, was the
Mhm.
rhythm of savor.
Mm.
Jesus
Mhm.
savored life. Like
Yes.
when you think of savoring, you think of like really enjoying
Mhm.
something
Yeah.
and getting every drop of enjoyment possible out of that moment, out
Mhm.
of that
Mhm.
experience, out of that food, out of whatever it is. And Jesus lived life that way. It was so fascinating to see verses I'd never seen before and things that I'd never noticed before until I was
Mhm.
looking at it through that lens.
Mhm.
And having fun and savoring life has definitely been a big rhythm for me of staying
Mhm.
healthy. But in order to do that, in order to have space for that, you have to set boundaries. You have
Right.
to protect. Because if every moment of your time is spent serving because you feel like it's what you're supposed to do, you have no time left to
Right.
savor. You
Right.
can't keep things in balance
Mhm.
unless you start by protecting your
Mhm.
calling, being
Yeah.
really clear with what God has called you to versus the obligations and expectations of others.
Right.
And that gets murky for people. Why does it get murky? Because of our belief system, our
Right.
underlying belief systems about, okay, I'm supposed to do this. I shouldn't say no.
Mhm.
I should just push through. If
Yeah.
I don't volunteer here, even though I'm volunteering at 100 other places, if I don't volunteer at 101, the whole children's ministry is going to fail. So I better be the one to step in and do it because if I don't, to me, that's a mindset that has pride living in it. It's like, it's
Yeah.
my job to
It's true.
fix it all and do it
Yeah.
all and be all things to all
Yeah.
people.
Savior complex. Yeah.
And you can't be a savior complex and need a savior all at the
Right.
same time. You
Yep.
either need a savior or you are the savior. It's like, which
Mhm.
one's it going to be? What's my belief
Yeah.
system
That's true.
actually rooted in?
Mhm.
And I do think it's some hard soul searching work to
Yeah.
get to some of those belief systems, to unpack
Mhm.
some of those things so we can face them and change the narrative. And when we do face some of those hard things, we find it easier to protect, easier to
Mhm.
put in boundaries, easier
Yeah.
to understand what I'm called to and what I'm not called to. Where do I
Mhm.
say no? What's
Mhm.
important? What are my priorities? And
Mhm.
especially, as you enter the season of marriage and family and your
Mhm.
calling starts to shift,
Right.
like you've probably seen families and marriages go down at the expense of
Yes.
ministry.
Yes, 100%.
And so this is so important before you even get to that point to really
Right.
understand what that looks like to protect your calling so that
Right.
you can make sure to stay filled.
Mhm. Yeah. So
I'm proud
true.
of you.
Thank you.
I love that you want to get this right in this season because you're
Mhm.
young, you're just starting out your ministry career.
Mhm.
you're just in the beginning of learning what that looks like. And if you can get this right in this season, you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be able to do so much more filled
Mm-hmm.
than you would be able to do bordering on empty.
Right. Right. And I'm curious, what would you say about when here I am in a position of still needing to give out for my job? How would you implement boundaries in that, or how would you encourage someone in that space where it's like I can't really stop in that field. I can adjust some things, but what does that look like to you?
Well, the beautiful thing about it is I think the right way to do it isn't to stop everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes we're so burnt out that we do need to stop everything because we're so out of balance and
Mm-hmm.
so in the negative. And I've seen people who have been so empty and beyond empty and in the negative that they actually don't have the capacity and they do have to stop for a
Mm-hmm.
season.
Mm-hmm.
But for the majority of us, we have to practice rhythms all throughout the week, all throughout the day, so that we don't get to a point where we're like desperate for a break, desperate for vacation, because our life is structured in a way that's the balance of pouring out and filling up, pouring out and filling up. It's part of our
Mm-hmm.
daily routine, it's part
Right.
of our daily rhythm, it's part of our weekly rhythm. And so I think the word you used is really important. Adjust. What
Mm-hmm.
needs to be adjusted in this
Mm-hmm.
season of life? What are my priorities? What do I need to let go of?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to say no to? Where do I need to speak up for myself and be a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more assertive to get
Mm-hmm.
my needs met and to take care of myself?
Mm-hmm.
Those are some hard conversations sometimes. I'm not able to do that, or I have to do things a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
But those small adjustments, if they're rooted in healthy belief systems,
Mm-hmm.
go a really long way. So I think it's worth starting to look at your life,
Mm-hmm.
prioritize, figure out what needs to go, what can stay, what needs to be adjusted and
Mm-hmm.
tweaked, and to really start practicing changing your daily rhythms,
Mm-hmm.
not just like the big picture.
Right. Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
And I think soul care is really going to give you some much needed direction,
Mm-hmm.
motivation, and help you start unpacking some of those roots as well. You know, before I
Mm-hmm.
even get into the 6 rhythms of soul care, I spend the first 5 chapters getting to the roots, the why.
Mm-hmm.
Where is this coming from? What needs to be adjusted? Because, like I said, if we don't do that work, with a counselor and with mentors, with friends, really get into the roots of some of those things from the past, we can adjust the rhythms for a little while, but then we'll default right back if they're
Right.
not rooted in healthy belief systems.
Right.
So that's something for you to do a little digging in,
Yeah.
changing some of those underlying belief systems. And
Mm-hmm.
have you done any work in counseling?
Yes, I love counseling. I do it every week. I'm
Lovely. I'm so
obsessed with
glad to
it.
hear it. I can tell in your language,
Mhm.
in your insight and understanding. I can tell that you have more awareness than the average person of what's
Mhm.
going on underneath the surface and where it's coming from. So you're on a really great start. And I'm glad that you've noticed these things because honestly, I feel like when
Mhm.
you get this right, you're going to help so many other people get
Yeah.
this right as well.
Mhm. It's true. I mean, it's so worth it. We're created to live in wholeness, so it's like why not, you know?
Yeah, life abundant. That's what God
Yeah.
calls us to. It's
Yeah.
the enemy who wants to steal, kill,
Yeah.
and destroy.
Yeah,
Not
it's so
not
true.
ministry. Ministry is not
Right.
supposed to steal, kill, and destroy. We're supposed to
Right.
live abundantly.
So
And
true.
we need to take inventory of that on a regular basis. So thank you so much, Liz, for sharing and for being an advocate for those in ministry to live filled and to
Mhm.
live healthy so that they can continue to pour out. Thank you for taking steps to do that
Mhm.
in your own life.
Mhm.
And I'm proud of you for starting this journey and staying on it. Thanks for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and just creating this space. It's been so helpful.
Yeah, my pleasure. I look forward to hearing from you. Once you read through Soul Care, keep me posted of what you learn and the things that God reveals along the way.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Yeah, take care.
You too.